Hare Krishna, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today I am fielding another really great question about Bhakti Yoga. So this question comes from a listener who is wondering about intercessory prayer. Um, I've been wondering about praying for other people. How and why does intercession work? How can we as other spirit souls pray and maybe even bring grace to other people in need? Doesn't God see their need anyway? I mean, what's the point in intercession if you get what I mean? Does it lift the spirit of the prayer and the one who is prayed for? I was also wondering about the lonely people who nobody know they exist, who nobody may know they exist and nobody prays for. What happens during intercession? Wow, these are really good questions. So I'll try to answer the best that I can, but I'll answer from what I've learned from my teachers again, and from what I've learned from the wisdom literature, and then a small particle of my own understanding on the subject matter. So, um, what does intercession do? How does it work? And why would God need to hear the prayers of other people? Why would God need to hear my prayer, for example, about someone else if he knows their needs perfectly well? Right. Good question. So we can't think about what prayer is and what prayer accomplishes in an overly linear manner. So, for example, one of my favorite things about the Bhakti tradition is that we have one of Lord Krishna's incarnations called Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He came, I think it was during the 1400s, and he was said to be the golden avatar incarnation of Krishna in the Kali Yuga. And he's the one who invoked the Sankirtan movement, singing and dancing in the streets, Kirtan with the drums. So the Hare Krishna is brought to the 60s. And the Swami who brought the Hare Krishna movement to the 60s, he brought it here in the 60s, and you saw young people dancing in the park singing Hare Krishna. So, which is what the Beatles got into for a little bit too, especially George Harrison. So, this avatar, Lord Chaitanya, is God. But what does he do with his life? He goes out and sings and prays and dances and chants and worships God. So one of the simple takeaways from that is that prayer is not about getting something. Prayer is about experiencing our connection with God. So in Bhakti, for example, we chant the names of God. And it's not like, oh, well, you should never pray for anything for yourself, because we're humans and, we have needs, and it's okay to talk to God about what's going on in our lives and our needs and our fears and our anxieties. But in Bhakti, the highest conception of prayer, you could say, is one that is more about connecting in loving relationship with God, not petitioning God for something like God as a wish fulfiller, in other words, but saying, let me sing, dance, and love and abide in these sacred sound vibrations of your names. And that's what kirtan is, and that's what mantra meditation is. We're just basking in the glow of that sweetness, of that holiness. Now, when we pray for other people, what we're doing is we are, first of all, God is at work in things all the time, very organically. There's a certain way in which the laws of karma apply, and they may be more fixed in some ways, and sometimes it's destiny to experience certain things, to burn off different kinds of karma, etc. The prayers of people who are close to God, who love God, are said to be, in Bhakti, what's interesting is that, God is sort of becomes submissive in a way to his lovers, to those people who really love God and serve God and have this deep, passionate, loving connection to God. They're doing so, like the devotee of God is doing so, in a humble, submissive manner. But God reciprocates by also saying, you bought me, I'm yours, like I'll follow you. So in this way, there's this kind of playful competition, you could even say, with God, where it's like, I love you so much and I want to serve you. And God's like, no, 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 I love you. I want to serve you. And it goes back and forth like that, which is why God comes into an incarnation and prays and dances and sings to God, because that reciprocation is so beautiful. There's nothing better than it, to say, I love you, I want to serve you, I want to give everything to you to make you happy. And then God saying, no, 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 not me, you. And it, right, like that. Okay, so if that's the picture, if that's the model for us that we have of loving God and of God loving us, then you can imagine what power people who are engaging in that kind of lifestyle, where they're trying to embody that kind of intimacy with God, the power that those people have when they pray for someone or something, because they're close to God, right? And God is, in a sense, submissive and renders service to his devotees. And so when someone like that says, please, please have compassion, have mercy on this soul. Now, ultimate compassion and mercy is not just to give them money or to make their body better or something, to solve some kind of problem. The ultimate mercy is, of course, to bring that person into the same kind of intimacy and love. And so, in a sense, the saintly prayer is heard by God for others, and um, you know, is it specifically because God is in a sense, you know, uh, very responsive to his devotees' prayers. But the devotee is someone also who is not necessarily saying, look, God, you have to do these things, please do these things. They're saying, look, my brother, my sister, someone that I know is suffering, please help them. But even more so than that, not my will but thine. In helping them, however you help them, please make the final result to make them aware of you and draw them into the same kind of relationship that I understand, that which is that that there can be this loving connection. If they don't know that, help them to know that. So that's the ultimate prayer that we want to pray for other people. But along the way, if we're living a daily life of prayer and we're developing closeness to God, our prayers are they have Shakti, a kind of Shakti. And so to say, so and so is suffering, if it's in your will, please help them. That's power. It's a very powerful prayer. So I hope that makes sense. Again, ultimately, we want to prioritize praying for people to get the ultimate form of benediction and happiness, which is the same love of God that the devotee is always seeking out through the practice of bhakti. So I hope that helps about intercessory prayer. Um, God God is always the most merciful being. Like, we're not, there is a sense in which there's this funny competition that can happen, where sometimes it's said that Krishna's devotees are more merciful than Krishna. That sometimes you'll hear people say that, and that's a poetic way of saying that we can become extensions of God's mercy and compassion by in a sense, extending ourselves more and more and more to those who are suffering in the world. And that there's a way in which we act as the instrument of God's mercy and grace by doing that. And that's why it's sort of, you could say it's poetically said that sometimes the devotee is more merciful than God. But when we are merciful, when you are sitting here writing this question saying, what about people who are lonely, who aren't seen, who are hurting and no one sees them, no one prays for them? Well, you are praying for them. Just by having that concern, that is your prayer for them. You see what I mean? And that's the way in which, in a sense, poetically, you're more merciful than Krishna. You know what I mean? But Krishna does see them, and Krishna is the ultimate reservoir of all mercy. Any mercy that we have is an extension of Krishna's mercy. So any time that you pray the prayer, God, please be with the lonely, please be with the names that are not known, please be with those who are broken or left, those prayers are so powerful, because that is, when you pray that prayer, it's not that you're praying necessarily to God to go and do something that God doesn't see. It's that you are becoming an extension of how God sees. You're becoming a manifestation of how God sees the lost and the broken and the lonely and tends to them. It's through you and through your concern and through your worry about how is this addressed that God is addressing it. And so that's another beautiful part about how we can participate as intercessory prayer warriors, you could say. The other thing that's really important is that we trust also that God's way of guiding all souls is perfect and perfectly concerned at all points. There's not a moment where God isn't perfectly in control, perfectly concerned, perfectly merciful, and perfectly guiding someone's journey. At the exact same time, if we feel, hey, God, you're missing something, someone's alone, et cetera, et cetera. Try not to think of it as I'm reaching out to God to do something God doesn't know. And instead try to think of it as these feelings that I'm having are an extension of the mercy of God. And you start to, when you get filled with that, that's really special. Think about all the saints in the world, like Thich Nhat Hanh, the Dalai Lama. Think about Mother Teresa, other people who have given their whole lives to people who are suffering. What did they say about where that came from? It didn't come from the feeling that God was deficient, that God was not paying attention, or that there was something that needed to be done that God couldn't cover. No, it was that they felt like they were becoming instruments of that kind of concern and compassion that God has. And I think so. If you can shift your perspective, your way of perceiving things a little bit like that, that may help as well. All right, so that's what I've got about intercessory prayer. I hope that this was interesting and helpful. As always, feel free to leave your comments, email questions to info@nightlightastrology.com, or leave them in the comments section. I love the questions that you guys send me about Bhakti. They're so helpful. Don't forget that there is a great place where you can get more tuned into Bhakti Yoga, and I'd like to just plug that really quickly right here. This is called the Bhakti Community. It is a program that is facilitated by my guru and his spiritual community out in the Bay Area, but it is online, so you can join from anywhere, and there's tons of really good classes and ways of getting more deeply immersed in the in the practice of Bhakti Yoga and in the community of Bhakti. So check that out for sure. Bhakti.community. All right, that's what I've got for everyone. I hope you guys are having a good day, and we'll see you again soon. Hare Krishna.